All right, and we're back. It's COMP397, and it's week 6, lesson 6, part 2. Just again, a piece of administration. I'm not happy with this little dialing right here. A piece of administration we need to talk about is, like I said, exam is going to happen. Just to remind everybody for this video again, next week, again at 3:30, we'll do a bit of an exam, about an hour. I'm going to run it like a test, like a race. So please get here on time, get here early. And then we'll run it from 3:30 till about 4:30 in that range. We'll be done, and then we'll be talking about other things. Just so we can continue. Because I know that day you have this slot machine due. So if there's anything we haven't done for the slot machine today, we'll finish it off that day, so you'll have it for that night, worst case scenario. I'm also going to give you assignment number 3, which is going to be the side scroller thing for next week. So then you'll have it week 7, and you'll have a couple of weeks. So by week 9 is when it's going to be due. And then I'm also going to see if I can give you your final project information next week, so you have it way ahead of time, which means you can start it early and then do your planning. Just a little bit of talk about your final project. You can base it on one of these things we've been doing together, right? So, for example, your side scroller, you can base it off that. You can't really make it sort of off of your, pick your own and play your own adventure thing, because that's kind of silly. And you can't do it off slot machine, but you can do your side scroller or pick another thing you're going to do. I'm probably going to build another kind of game with you over the course of the weeks we're together. So when I give you guys your final project, after we've done, I've finished the demo with the side scroller, mail pilot and all that stuff. We're going to finish the demo, start from scratch, just like we did before on the game on the Unity side. I'm going to give you your stuff, and after we're done, I'm going to build another game. And I'm probably going to build something new this time around if I have the ability to, depending on my time frame, where I'll build something new with you, something we'll choose to do, and we'll bang it out together as kind of a group. We have a small group this time around, so we can kind of do that, and I think it's going to be good learnings for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to build my game alongside you, but it won't be a side scroller game because I'm done with side scrollers, right? And it won't be a platformer because I'm done with platforms. Something else. We got to do something else. All right. Let's get back into this. So we don't need any more image manipulation. I think we've done enough for today. What we do need is to get into the heart of this thing. Now, we have a couple of things we mentioned last time that are going to be issues, that I know they're going to be issues. First of all, we created this game object. I know I need a button that's a sprite button. I know I need a label that's not, I need to rework my label a little bit. If I double click on my label, as you can see, I have my label string, my label font, my label color, and X and Y coordinates, but they're all, the registration points are to the middle. And what I need to do is make my label a little bit more flexible than what it is. So here's my recommendation, right? Is in my label, I also ask to see if you want it centered or not. So if I say centered yes, right, is centered, then I'll activate my registration marks to make it the middle. If not, I'll leave it as is. This will allow us to use labels, regular labels, for my for the stuff that we're going to spit out on the slot machine, as opposed to make a new class. So I need just to make this class a little bit more flexible. So let's do the label thing first, because it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit, right? So, and this is going to mess up our stuff because we're using our label right now inside of our code. That's okay. So I'm going to listen for another parameter that we're going to say is centered, right? So is centered. You might call it a registration mark, or whatever you want to call it. And like reg centered, you could call it is reg centered or centered. I'm going to call it is centered, and I'm going to make it of type Boolean. Okay, so now that I've done that, and I'll save, I'm going to kind of do a test. I'm going to say this: when the constructor is made for my label, if is centered, right? If is centered is true, then, right, I'll do this. I'll make my registration mark in the middle, right, as an example. Otherwise, I'll just avoid this whole mark, and it'll be, the registration point will be at the top left corner as normal, right? So this will save us this trouble. It makes my label a little bit more flexible. Now, when I've done this, you see I have some issues now with my game, my menu, and my overscreen, because those scenes require my label, and I didn't put that level of detail in here for my game, my states here, or my screens, scenes, whatever you want to call them. So here's where I got to make that change, and it's going to show me that here I'm going to put is centered is true. So I want to make my label true. So So it's centered for this one, which says gameplay, right? My gameplay screen. Same thing with my menu screen, right? For now, I'm just going to put them in there so that I don't have an error. I'm going to erase these later on because we're going to make our, in my gameplay screen, I'm going to have my slot machine in a second, right? Here's my game over screen. I'm also going to put that in there too. So that way I don't have any more issues. So this is what my labels, an example of what my label is going to look like. Right? 60 pixels, consoleless, and I can choose other fonts or whatever if I want, different colors. Okay, so cool. So that fixed that problem, and I've adjusted my label. Now I got to make another sprite button or something else. Okay, so let's try this out. I'm going to go into my objects. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to add a new TypeScript file that I'm going to call sprite button. You know, again, sprite button, button sprite, whatever you want to call it. It's, as long as we know what it means, that's important. Let's do a new module. So it's going to be a new module. It's going to be in the objects module, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is we're going to make a new class called the sprite button class, which is going to be, we're going to export, right, a new class called sprite button, right, which extends, what is it going to extend, guys? Game object. Objects dot, just to be specific, game object. So it's going to be a game object, right? So it's going to inherit the regular things that game objects have. But the sprite button, right, is going to have additional things that the regular game object doesn't have. There's a good example of inheritance. So I still need to have a constructor, right? And my constructor then has to call the superclass. It's going to ask me for the superclass. And remember, my game object is my superclass. My game object is going to require an image string and an x and y coordinate, right? So I'm going to kind of pass that through my constructor, where I have my image string. I still need that, which is of type string, and my x coordinate, which is a number, and my y coordinate, which is also a number, my button, right? And my x and y coordinates are going to be the middle of my button now, right? Because it's going to, or sorry, the top left corner of my button. It's not going to be a centered button. It's going to be a button with the top left corner, and it's going to be a type sprite, so I can use it again. Okay, and my super is going to pass that stuff in there. So I'm going to pass in my image string and my x and y, those x and y coordinates. I'm going to pass those in there. And then I'm also going to do something like this. This dot x y as well is equal to x, just to make sure, and this dot y is equal to y. I'm not going to change the registration marks, because this is the button that's just going to be for sprites. All right, and now you might say there's other ways to do this. Yes, there is. I'm just going to keep it separate so that my sprite button and my button are separate. But one thing I do want to reuse, and this is where you can make a case to say, Tom, for your button, look at my buttons are all height and width of 150 and 50. I'm not going to have that anymore, right? I do want to have this mouse over this over button and all these things. So I might as well take these private methods and copy them out, because I want to need those. I'm going to go back to my sprite button and copy those private methods out, because that makes sense that I would have my over button and out button, right? The different states for my buttons that I would normally want. And I also want these two calls to these event handlers, right? I want that. What I don't want is all this. That's what I'm saving. And I don't want assets.getResult path string. I don't want to use that anymore. I want to make it a sprite, right? So let's go back to sprite button, and underneath here it's this. And my sprite button's done. Okay. So all I've done is I've changed my button to make it so I can use my new sprite objects that I put in my sprite sheet, right? As opposed to what I've done before. Okay. Let us attach this to my index.html. Let's not forget to do that, because sometimes we do that. We forget that we need to attach it to my HTML file. So my sprite button's done. I'm just going to close it off. My button's closed. I need to keep my game.ts file open, right? Let me just click this one as well. But this, and I don't need this anymore either. I need to, what I need to do is attach my sprite button here. It's going to be underneath my game object, obviously, or underneath my button. Let's put it directly underneath my game object, but it has nothing to do with the label or button. right? So I'm going to say sprite button, so I'm going to put it underneath here, right? It depends on my game object, superclass that I'm using, right? And what I'm going to do now is in my game.ts file on the top, underneath my game.ts file, gameobject.ts file, I'm going to pull in my sprite button. So that way we're good. So I've kind of got those in there. Okay, I've done all my prep. I've got my button. I might as well update my Team Explorer. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go unsync commits. Changes. I'll be okay. I don't want to have any untracked files, so I'm going to have those in there. I'm going to say added sprite button class. There we go. Commit. Yes. Save everything. Home and unsync commits and sync, and now you should have all my changes. Yay, we're up to date. Again, super important for this, so that we have this down. Now, I want to start laying out my slot machine and my states. I'm not going to touch this anymore because guess what? If I look here, I already have my state machine pretty much played out. I have my menu state, which we're gonna build later on. I have my play state and my over state. So these are the ones I want to work on. My play state now. So if I play this game right now, if I just like run this thing, it should still work as before, right? All it's going to do is pull up my screen. If I did everything correctly, there it is. And it's going to say game start. Now my game start is going to say, you know, play slot machine or play slots or something like that. So I need to change that and put some kind of descriptive picture in the background that's showing this, which I don't have right now, all right? But that's what it's going to do. When I click the start button, it's going to take me, instead of making a yay sound, it's going to take me here to show my slot machine in the middle of the screen here, where it's going to be. Also, here's a question. Do I need my canvas in my play state to be this large? Actually, here's another question. Do I need my canvas to be this large, period, anymore? Right? Remember my, if I go back to my slot machine assets for a second, and if I look at my my asset info, right? I noticed that I've got all this information. One thing I didn't put in here is the size of my my background. And if you look at my background image, you should probably put that in there. My background image is 375 by 480. Right? It's almost like 320. If I made it a little bit, you know, smaller, it'd probably fit on a 320 by 480 kind of size screen. At 375 by 480, though, it does not comply wholeheartedly to the screen, unless the most modern iPhones and Android phones will take it, because it goes 480 by 480. It's kind of a square nowadays, right, in terms of the resolution. But right now, it kind of is less than 640. It's 375. I'm going to have to center this somehow, which means because this image is a bitmap, I can do that. I've got to be very careful how I do it. Should I put it right now on the top left corner of my, because whatever offset I give this thing, I've got to give to all of these, right? So if I say I want to push this asset all the way to the right, and if I was to do a quick calculation, let's write this thing down. So my big image, I'm just going to put a little line in here, just to show you what I'm talking about here. Let's just get rid of all this, make the background white for my Excel sheet. Bear with me for a second when I'm my thinking. So I want you to understand my thinking, because it's important. All right. So my width and my height is 480. So it's my background, right? So yeah, it'd be nice if I actually could type, and if the my instead of white it's black, right? My background, right? My background image, if you will, is 375. Is that what I said? 375 by 480. So 375. I'll fix that in a second. 480, and it's a 0, 0, right? So here's where we get a little bit hairy here, and this one's to the left. So it's 375, but my screen is 640 pixels. So if my screen size, if I put that in there, I'll use the space over here. If my screen size is 640 pixels, so what's my offset? It's equal to 640 pixels, right? Minus 375. Which is 265, divided by 2, right? That means my offset for all my objects is going to be 132.5 pixels right now. I have to move it over 132.5 pixels for it to be perfectly centered. right? I'm just saying, that's one option, right? Or what if I changed my canvas to be 375 by 480? Could I do that? And what negative effects would that have? What do you think? What should I do? Should I change my canvas to be 375 by 480, or should I use my offset? What would you do? I'm going to ask the people on the floor here. So, Fahim, what do you think? What would you do? So, I have my canvas is 640 by 480 right now, right? But I have my background image is only 375 by 480. If I use the offset, I got to add the offset value to each of my my x coordinates. All my x coordinates got to be offset by 132.5 pixels, right? That's what's going to have to happen to each of them, right? It's not a bad solution. I've just got to say I've got to create a config file. In my config file, I would add in a constant that says plus offset, x offset, right? As an example, right? And then I would just add the x offset every time. So whenever I set up my x coordinate, it would be my x coordinate from here plus my x offset. Okay, that's one way of doing it. If I did my, if I was to do my other way, 375 by 480, I have a problem I want to tell you about that you should know about with canvases and with different screen resolution sizes. When I go out of the scale, it's 640 by 480 is a standard size. 800 by 600, standard screen size. 375 by 480, not standard. You know what that means? More processor drag, right? Anything that's not standard screen size, not standard proportions or whatever, gives me more processor drag. I might have some really weird effects, especially if I ever port this over to iPhone or something like that, right? So there's a couple of options. I have to do a redesign of my UI and make it so that somehow my whole object fits in 320 by 480. That's one option. If I was going to make it so that it fits almost any iPhone or any other mobile phone size. Or say this game is good for anything larger than like a tablet or larger, and I need my whole tablet size. It's not really optimized for that right now. If I was ever going to go mobile, I'm going to say let's not care about it. And I think what we should do that's going to help us, because if we went to that weird size, 375 by 480, which we could totally do, there'd be this little lag in our performance, and it wouldn't look right. Also, our screen resolution or our screen real estate for our menus and stuff would be a little bit off too. I don't mind though, and I'm going to go with the consensus. What do you guys think we should do? Stephen and friends on the side there. What do you think we should do? Should I go with should I change my canvas size to 275 by 480? Makes it a lot easier. I wouldn't have an offset. Or it might impact our performance a little bit because of a weird what's called proportion. Right? Ratio of screen resolution is going to be weird. It's going to be off. Right? Or do we do an offset of 132.5 pixels? We're going to center it anyway. That's not the point. It's not, but CSS. Remember, we can't use CSS in Canvas. Canvas is it's pixels. Huh? That's for the actual whole canvas, you mean, right? The whole canvas is the element you're centering. Yes, right? I'm talking about the stuff inside. You can't target the stuff inside with CSS. In the canvas with CSS? Yeah, I'll take a look at it after. Typically, from what I understand, you shouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff. You probably should avoid doing that, right? Because you're actually changing pixels around, right? Objects, right? So I don't mind if that's how it is. If that's how it works for you, all the power, right? I don't recommend it. Canvas small. Okay, let's do that. So if that's true, that means it's a minor change. We don't have this offset anymore. I don't care about that. What's going to do is all of these things are going to grow smaller to each thing. Now, here's the other thing. What if I wanted to keep, could I do this? Could I keep my canvas, my screen size the same size for my menu size, my menu screens? And do you think it's possible to make my screen size smaller for my gameplay screen only? Is that possible? And the other question is, can I also layer a canvas within a canvas, right? Where I have my canvas size itself small, right? Or I can create a container, I'm going to go there, a container called slot machine, which is a container that's inside my game container. And everything else is part of my container, which retains the same, there's no offset anymore. And I just offset my container by 135 and whatever, 132.5 pixels. That's the other option I could do. Because I only have to do my container, but everything inside of it is the same, the default local scale that I'm using. Local pixels. That's the other option I could do. I think that might work better for us. All right, so I'm just trying to think this out with you guys because there's options here. And this is an option you might come to deal with when your game, when you make it. Okay, so if that's true, that means that when we go to my gameplay screen, I'm going to go to my gameplay screen. Let's fool around with that now. I want to print my background out. That's the first thing I want to kind of do. I want to kind of show my background. So I want to go into my game.ts, which is in my states. And in here, you notice that I have it's a class, right? My game class. It's of type objects.scene, right? I have my level label, my back button, my next button. I have all these nice little buttons here. I'm going to remove them because I don't need my next button, back button, and all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of kill this thing. And even my level label is going to go. For this game class, I need to add them to add this to child, this.add child. I need to do that for sure because this, my scene, is a container, if you remember, right? But I'm going to actually include another container in this game. So I'm just going to kill all this. So I don't care about any of this right now. My update, I have my click button event and all this kind of stuff. I may need to keep one of these because I will have other button events, like for example my roll button and my bet buttons that will actually do something when I click them, right? So I may need to keep this here, all right, as just an example of what I can do. Okay. And this is my update. My update right now is empty. I may have to do something with that later. So I want to add in a private instance variable called slot machine. So I'm going to say private, right? The name is going to be called slot machine. Bear with me. If I can print it properly. And it's going to be of type container. Create.js container. All right? All right, so I've got my container. And my slot machine is the one that I'm going to add to stage. I'm not just going to add this to stage, stage.addChild this. I'm going to add to this, I'm going to add this.addChild container. So that's one thing I need to do at the bottom. So I'm going to say this.addChild. I'm going to add in my my slot machine. This.slot machine. And you know what? My slot machine is misnamed. I should probably make it with an underscore. Let's get that done now so I don't have to do that later. So I'm just going to rename this thing with an underscore just so that we keep with the convention of it being private. Okay, good. So I've done it there. I've made my container, but I haven't instantiated my container. I need to do that when I start my constructor up. So when my constructor is made, I'm going to create my, I have my start method. Here's my start method. And if you remember what I do with my start method, anything in my start method is kicked off in the superclass. Right? I don't know if you guys remember that. I mean, we made a start method, right? So let me take a look at the superclass for my scene, just to remind you. So this is what my scene looks like. And my start method is a public method that I'm going to start. On start, I'm going to kick off my my start method. Right? So what I want to do in my start is I want to add in this thing that's going to declare my slot machine. So I'm going to say this.underscore slot machine is equal to a new create.js container object. Right? So this is where my object is going to be located, right? My container. My container is going to have the offset, the unlucky offset of 137 pixels from the left hand, or whatever it is. And let me see, 132.5 pixels. So let's set this up. So it's going to say this.underscore slot machine .x, right, is going to start off at 132.5 pixels. But don't worry about the 0.5, it rounds off. Right? That's where the x coordinate of the slot machine is going to be. Now, this looks funny, right, for a second, because I've got my slot machine. It's an empty container right now. It doesn't have anything inside of it. Let's add, because it's a container, which is like almost like a little stage, I'm going to add in my slot machine object to it, my slot machine background. How do I do that? Right? So I'm going to do one of these. I'm going to say, first of all, I've got to declare the background image of some kind, right? So in my private area, I'm going to say private. I'm going to call it a background, right? Which is of type create.js.bitmap. That's what it's going to be. It's a bitmap object, right? And I'm going to add this new bitmap object to the scene. So I'm going to say this dot background is equal to a new create.js.bitmap, right? And what does it need? It needs an image object or URL or whatever it is. So remember what I have to use. I have to use assets.getResult, and then I have to put in the name of my background, which is just simply called background. It's a little bit smaller for you to see it all. So there it is, right? Let me just hide this piece so you can see more of it. So what am I doing here? So my background, I'm just declaring this. It's just a hanging object. It's an object, but it's not added anywhere. The next piece I need to do, I'm not going to change the location of my background, 0, 0. It's going to be centered at the top left corner of my slot machine containers screen, right? Everything is going to be offset by 132.5. That's my offset, right? Who cares? That's never going to change, right? But this background is going to be in the middle. So I'm going to say something like this. This dot slot machine dot add child, and then this dot underscore background. So I'm adding the background to the slot machine. Add background image. Okay. Okay, that's enough. I should be able to see my background image at this point, because all I'm doing is when I go to my game container, I've added my background. If I've done everything correctly, I've added my background image to this new container called slot machine, right, as an example. And my slot machine is going to be added to the stage right here, right? I'm adding this first of all to myself, which is my scene. And my scene is going to be added to the stage, and we're all dandy and gold. Okay, I'm going to leave these little buttons here, click back button and click next button here, but they're not going to appear in my scene for now. All right, let's see how this thing looks. And if it's not crazy. Right, so, huh? Does it look good already? Yeah. See how easy it is? Like once you start rolling with this whole thing, I'm just going to refresh this thing. So I click start, and all of a sudden, boom, here's my slot machine. Right? It's perfectly centered. Right? Now, if you notice, the slot machine is inside of my game screen. I have room for other things here. Like, for example, if I want to put eventually I might, a reset button on the right side, or some kind of power button and a reset button on this side, because it's not part of my canvas, if you will. I could change the background so it's kind of a more interesting background than the way it is right now. The background of my scene, as opposed to the background of my object here. So it's perfectly centered. I also don't want to have that ugly yay sound, like a little cow sound, which we're going to get rid of eventually, right? Okay, I need to layer my buttons now, and I need to build up my slot machine. Let's do that really quickly. I'm gonna need this. So my bet1 button, I need all these objects I'm going to put in. My tile 1, tile 2, all these tiles I'm going to put in. These are going to be the things I'm going to be using, tile 1, tile 2, tile 3. I need to remember these because these tiles are going to have positions, and in the beginning, I'm going to add in the blank tile in the beginning, right? That's what I'm going to use as a default. So they're actually going to add them all in, and then finally, the last one, in order, is going to be my bet line. So let's add them all in. So I'm going to say bet1 button. All right, so this is the first one. And again, width and height I don't care about, but I do care about this position, 23 and 386. So this is what I'm going to start adding up here. So private, right, underscore bet1 button. Now what kind is it? What kind of button is it? What kind of image is this? It's a sprite button. So objects.sprite button, right? And my object.sprite button, this first bet1 button, I'm going to layer it on top of the background. This is why it's important to add this in order. So I'm going to do something like this. This dot underscore. I'm going to do one, and then we'll do the next one. Bet1 button, right, is equal to a new objects.sprite button, and I need the name of my sprite button and the x and y coordinates. The name of my sprite is, if I'm not wrong, if I go back to game.ts, is, so you see how I put it in here. The thing is called the same thing, bet1 button. See, do I have, yeah, bet1 button, here it is. So I'm going to add it one at a time just so that we don't make lots of mistakes. Because when we add a lot of things, it goes bad, eh? Bet1 button, and then my x and y coordinates, which are 23 and 386. 23 and 386. Okay, so that's my bet1 button, right? And it has the whole effect. It can hover over it because it's a sprite button. Now that's kind of built in. I'm going to add this to the scene, so I'm going to add it to the slot machine. So this dot underscore slot machine dot add child this dot underscore bet1 button. Now I have a problem with this thing. I'm going to point it out to you. Bet1 for my buttons, they all have to have actual come on, bet1 button. Here we go. So this is neat. I'm going to add more than one of these buttons, right, at 23 and 386. I want them to react when I click on them. And I can't be doing something like this. I can't say something like, for each button, this dot on click, then add $10 to my scene, or add one thing. I need to be able to pass in on the on click event or something like that. When I click on the button, I've got to be able to decide whatever the button is called. I need to parse it somehow, the name of the button, and I got to figure that out, that logic. You know, now for now, what I'd like to do is just use one of these. Can I just get rid of them? One of them, and we have one click event that I'm gonna make. I'm gonna call this click bet1 button, right? Click bet1 button. And for now, I'm not going to change my menu state. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to, when I click my one button, I want to console.log. Make the one console.log, right, and say I'm going to print out a message to the console that says added 1 or bet 1. That might be the one. So you might want to say bet 1. The reason why I want to do this right now is because I don't want to do anything yet. I don't want to add them or do anything. But you're going to see how much this is repetitive, right? This is how we start breaking it down, right? All right, so I've got my button. I've got my slot machine. I never have to, if you notice, I never have to add it to the stage, because as soon as I add it to my slot machine, it gets added into the local coordinate space of my slot machine. Okay? So that's the little bit of preparation we need to do. I don't have any sounds when I click my button. That's another thing. My button also has to make a sound, the click button sound, which I don't have yet. And I have to kind of see if I can grab some of those sounds, right? So I'm going to share with you guys, right? Okay. So that's kind of one. Let's check this out and see if just one button worked, if it layers in the right location. So I'm going to stop debugging, and I'm going to press play. And if everything goes well, then I should have one button layered where I want it to be. Start. Yay. And here it is. I hover over it. I get the effect that I want, and it's layered in exactly the right location. That's where my bet1 button is going to be. So I'm starting to build up my slot machine. If I click onto it, and if I go to right-click, inspect element, and if I look at the console, then I should have one. Well, that's another thing. I'm actually pulling for something else there. But if I click this button, that's how many objects I have in my scene, I bet you. If I click this object again and again, I should be able to click it over and over again and get that going. And it seems like when I'm clicking on it, I can't do anything. Oh yeah, I know why. I have to add an event handler or event listener to my button, which I didn't do. So I'm going to stop debugging. I got to go over here to this sprite1 button, this bet1 button, and I'm going to add in an event handler. Now this is the great thing. I can add all my event handlers into my start as an example, but I can add them in after I've added everything to the stage. It can be added in because they're asynchronous, right? They have their own little loop going on, right, for all my event handlers. They have a dispatcher that dispatches the events, right? So here's how it goes. I can say this dot underscore bet1 button dot on click. I forgot to do this. Here's the other thing I'm going to have to do for every one of these, right? On click, I'm going to say then I want to go to this dot underscore click bet1 button. That's what I've done. I've clicked the bet1 button, right? And I also want to pass in a reference to this. Okay, so there's a couple ways I could do this. I could, and I recommend you do this, I could put this just after I've added it to the slot machine, or I could put this down here. I'm okay with putting it down here because these are all my listeners. So these are event, add event listeners. This is where it's going to be, right? And all my button listeners, my slot, when I do the, spin the reel, all that stuff is going to be here, right? But I don't want to call click bet 1 button, click bet 2 button, click bet 10 button. I got to figure out a way of doing this so I only click it once. And I can do that because I know the target. I know the target of what it is. I can go event.target, whatever the event.target is, right? Whatever that name is, the name of the event target, as an example, I can have it so that the event target itself has a has a value, right? So I can pass in a value to the event target, the name of the button, right? And I can do that because I have sprite button class, and my sprite button class can have a value. I can add a value to my sprite button class to carry like a value 1, 10, 2, whatever it's going to be. So when I declare a new sprite button, I can also ask for the value inside the constructor, which is 1, 2, 10, 100, whatever. So I only have to do that once, and then I can go back in here, and also the name would be bet 1 button, right? When I declare my sprite image, it's a name. I have the name. I know what it is. I can detect it, and then when I go back into my bet 1 button event, instead of my click bet 1 button, it would be click button. My click button event would detect what's the target, and then I can add whatever the value is for that button onto my whatever I'm betting. Okay, as opposed to having 5, 6, 10 of these event listeners, which would be ridiculous. I can have 1. So that's my plan in my head. Let's see if this works first of all for the 1, and then we'll figure out the 10. We still got to individually add the other buttons anyway, though. Nothing we can do there. Okay, so I'll go back here. Start game. It's going to say yay. I'm going to go to let's do a inspect element, and I'm going to go to console. And when I click the button 1, it's going to add bet 1, bet 1, bet 1. It's going to keep betting 1 as long as I do it. So now I know that the bet function is working. Let's add the other buttons and then fix up the function. All right, like I said. So I'm going to close this down. And then we're going to add the rest of the buttons to the UI. And if you notice, I can cut and paste, right? So I go one of these. That's why I've done this. And I'm going to go, so there's a bet, if I'm not wrong, there's a bet 10 button. Let's go back here and see what they are. So I need to add in bet 10, bet 100, and bet max, right? Bet 10, bet 100, bet max. Now bet max is going to be interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one. It's going to be an interesting value for my click button because it doesn't have a value. It's max. I'm going to figure that one out, how that's going to work. Maybe that'll be the different one, right? So bet 10 and bet 100. Okay, let's add them in. So I'm going to go back. So, boom, bet 10, boom, bet 100. So this is bet 10. We're going to change the X and Y coordinates in a second. Bet 100. Right? We'll do one more, bet max, okay? Just so we get them all in. Bet max. And we're going to change this up. Now, of course, I'm going to change the values here. Sorry, bet 10. And I need to add them in here as different objects. So copy 1, 2, 3 more. And instead of bet 1, it's going to be bet 10 because they have to be individual buttons. Bet 100. And then bet max. They've got to be in there, right? And now I can actually go in here and go, I'll take the value of this and just change this one. So bet 10, bet 100. I'll fix this in a second. Was that? Arg. Okay, that's okay. I'll add the other square. It's either me or the other square later. Bet 100. Oops. Bet 100. I know it's like watching paint peel when I do this, but it's useful because you see the whole process, like I said, as opposed to me rushing ahead and it's done. Guys, take a look at the code now, right? I never liked those kind of demos where you kind of looked at the code and go, "What's so? I don't get it." It's just me just copying and pasting, as opposed to me understanding what the person's doing. What was that? Yeah, the process is, the thinking is what I want you. I want you to understand my thinking. Okay, I'm not quite done. I need to add the different values here. So 88 is the next one. I'm not changing my position though. 88, and the next one is 153. Right, and I'm just going to get rid of this, and we'll stop debugging for a second. And the next one is 218. Okay, so those ones are all the buttons, and let's just see that we're all using the same. Instead of bet 1 button on, right? I need to do this a bunch of times. So bet 2 button on, same click event. So I still need to add in the same number of click listeners, right? But I need to do it a little bit different. Now, you might say, hold on, shouldn't we put this as part of my my sprite button class, that they all, because they're bet buttons or whatever you want to call them, right? Yeah, there's different approaches we can use. So we have a click listener in there as well. So instead of just the sprite, I'll show you what I'm talking about here before I go on. An example of this is if I went to my sprite button class, I have this on mouse over, this on mouse out. The question would be, can I add this, because I'm doing the exact same thing, can I add this dot on click to my class? And the answer is probably yes. So I don't have to do my listeners inside of my object. It's already done for me, right? So I never have to add my listeners. I just have to do one listener that they pass on the value, and I add it into a value like that we're going to call, it's a global value that we're going to have for the game, that we're going to call something like, we're going to add one to the bet amount. That's what's going to happen. And the only way we can add this on is if we check to see if we have enough money to add to the bet. Right? That's what we're going to try and do. For now, though, let's leave that out because there's going to be some complications around this. And we'll do it the long way. So first, let's leave it as is and see if they appear in the order that they're supposed to be appearing. All right, so bet max, I think I've done everything correctly and I haven't made any mistakes. But who knows? When you copy and paste, there's always copy and paste errors. Let's run it again. Let's see how it looks. And game start. Yay. And I got my bet buttons, right? They don't do anything when I hover over these ones. They actually click on these ones, but I need my one spin button, and then I'm almost done. So let's add my spin button next. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab this. Now, first of all, I need to define a spin button. This is my main workhorse, my spin button. Private spin button is of new objects.sprite button. You could have called it bet button or whatever, but that's fine too. And I'll save it. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll just take one of these ones, these puppies, right? I'll copy it, and I'll put it here. And now imagine if you didn't have these sprite buttons, you'd have to put all that other information in here too. The X and Y coordinates, all that extra lines, all those extra lines of code that we wouldn't need. And this would be spin button, I'm guessing. And let me make sure that that's how it's laid out. Spin button, yeah, spin button. And I'm going to take my spin button here, and I'm going to put it onto this, add it onto there. I'm going to be a little more careful with my cut and paste, because I was just a little bit careless there last time. Okay, I got my spin button, and I don't have a spin button yet, but I will need my own spin button. My spin button, like I said, is going to be the heart and soul of this program, right? When I click my spin button, it's got to check to see if I have enough money, and if I have enough money, if I've actually bet something, my spin button will be enabled or disabled. All that kind of functionality will have to be there. Okay, because I can't bet without money. Okay, where's my spin button located? It is at 289. So let's change that. See how this is working out perfectly in terms of once I've done all my pre-work, there's no guesswork involved. I've done all my setup, and now I can lay out everything as normal, right? Okay, now let's try this out to see if my spin button's there, and it will be, but just to say if I check one step at a time before I move on. Yay. Yay. Here's my spin button. See, so my slot machine is looking pretty good so far, right? My spin button doesn't do anything, and I want to definitely add things here and display things up here. Now, this is where I'm going to have to, when I pull up my slot again, I'm going to have to know where it's added in, how I'm going to add in this label. Same thing with credits, bet, and winnings. We haven't done those things yet. And that stuff is the stuff that we're going to record over here, right, one time. We should have probably already done that. Just from a time perspective, though, you know, you run out of time. Okay, and I want to add in my blanks. I want to add my tiles in there. So my tile, 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 my blank tiles, with my bet button, my my bet line on top of it. So I'm going to add my bet line in there too. And add all my entire, everything I can add in, I'm going to add in here. Okay, let's try this out. Okay, so my next thing I'm going to add in, I'm going to add in my tiles. So tile 1, so I'll say, here's my tiles, so private, I'll say it's going to be called tile 1, right? Which is going to be of objects.gameObject, because now they're going to be a game object, my own little game objects I've made, right? Which is going to be a type sprite. I'm going to add this in, and then I'm going to add in, of course, oops. I'm going to add this in, hold on a second, a couple of times. So we're going to say, now this is where you might think, tile 1, tile 2, tile 3, I might as well do a tile array, right? I won't do that right now, but I could. So let's just go tile 1, tile 1, tile 1, tile 2, tile 3. There's 3 tiles. They're all game objects. Okay, now let's instantiate those 3 tiles by going down here, and they don't spin. There's no, I'm not going to have an on-click event yet for them. Let's just add them in as part of my UI. So I'm going to add them in. 1, 2, 3. Just making the thing, and then this will be blank. Let me show you what this looks like, right? I'm going to add the blanks in there 3 different times. I have a blank. Here it is, right? And so I'm going to add the blanks in there. You're going to say, well, why add a blank? Because you're going to see that's the image that we're going to have eventually. So I'm going to say blank. I could have probably done 1, but anyways. Oh, that's the wrong one. I meant to do it here. Blank. Copy, paste the same object. I'm adding it a bunch of times. And now the position is important because they're tiles, 74, and they're different positions, 74, 192. So they're the first one, 74. I probably should have copied and pasted later, but anyways, whatever. 192, and this one's going to be at 152, 192. Again, I'm just setting up my UI here. And then we're going to tie it in together if we have time today. 230, 192. All right, and I'm adding in, it's not going to be the spin button, it's going to be tile 1, tile 2, and so on. So this is tile 1, and I'm just going to copy this thing and go here, and that'll be okay, Tom. Here, and here. And they're not going to be sprite button, they're going to be objects.gameObject. Game object. This is a little bit less typing, that's all. I'm just saving a little bit of typing. Because they're not going to be sprite buttons, they're not going to have that extra on-click method that's attached to them. Sprite buttons are game objects, but game objects are not sprite buttons, if you will, right? The other way around. All right, and it's not tile 1, tile 1, tile 1, it's tile 1, tile 2, tile 3. Almost there. Then I'll update everything for you guys to, all my fine work be in your hands. All right, there's that one. Now you won't be able to see them. They will be appearing as blanks. You won't be able to see them at all if we've done it correctly. So let's 75, 152, and 230. Let's test it to see that there's no overlap. That's the one thing I like to do every time and I like to do it in chunks like this because sometimes we do too much at once and then things are a mess. You're like, hey, what happened? How come it didn't work?
Yay.
We're good, right? You can't see them right now, right? Because they're white, but they're there, right? Now let's layer the next piece on top of it, which is going to be my bet line. So I'm just doing it in order here. Here's my bet line. So my bet line is going to be here, private underscore bet line, and it's going to be of objects.gameObject, objects.gameObject. And I'll do the same thing. I'll copy the last one. So I'll get one of these. Now this is a little closer, a little easier, and we're going to do one of those. and this will be called bet line. Good. And same thing with this one. I'm not sure how I called it on the line here. I think bet underscore line. What the hell? It's just the way I import. So that was a mistake. That should never have happened. Ever. Right? But anyways, what it is. You know, sometimes you just kind of go with the flow, fellas. All right. This bet line, I'm going to copy this into here because I'm adding a bet line in there into my slot machine. And my position has got to be changed because it's got to be at 61 by 227. So 61 by 227, and that's what's making up. This is building up my UI basically is what I'm doing, right? We're doing pretty good so far. We've built up our UI nicely. It's looking pretty good. Let's see if I've done this correctly. If I didn't make any mistakes. Checking. Just doing one more check, and then let's see how this works. So we should have our bet line. That should be layered on top of my blanks, right? And it should be the final thing here. So there we go. There's my bet line. Not bad. Looks a little low to me. That's a mistake. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like my bet line needs to come up a little bit. So instead of 227, this is sometimes why I check like this because I can't tell. Notice how there's the let's see if I can just zoom in here and see what sometimes what happens is it's so small. Yeah, maybe a couple of pixels up. This probably would have been a 225 would have probably been better off. I'm gonna kind of go back to this and see what that looks like, and see why that is. That worries me because that might mean the other things. I can't see these ones yet, the blanks, but I will, right? And to test that off, how do I test that? Let's make one a banana. Right? Here's a banana. Actually, let's make them a banana. We'll make this a bell, and we'll make this a 7, just so that way we can see what they are, so that there's something that shows in the bet line. Right? And let's refresh that, because that's how easy it is to change the image. That's the way I did that way. Right? It may seem like I'm crazy at the beginning, but I've kind of come around this place a couple times. See, not bad. Right? So it's starting to look good. I've got them in the right position. Right? What do you think? Got them in the right position. I've got the bet line right now. I moved it up to 225. For whatever reason, it was off by a couple pixels, but I've corrected that. And now I'm ready to get my buttons working. All right. There's a couple of approaches we can take. Let's make these blank again. There's a couple of approaches we can take to this, and I want to mention this to you only because there's some issues here. One is, let's get the one approach would be forget the bet buttons for now, right? Let's get the spin button working without bets, so we can see the results, the spinning, and then add the validation after. I like that because, again, I always go for low-hanging fruit. I know that my spin button click event is going to be unique. My bet one button on click event, this one here, I'm probably not going to do. I'm going to leave this one here, just so that I don't have to build it again, but because I might have to copy and paste it or modify it, or put it inside the original button. But I'm going to build another one, and it's going to be the button, the spin button. I'm going to say this dot underscore spin button dot on and done click. I'm going to go to this. I don't have this function yet, but this dot spin button click event. Spin button click event. And it's going to pass in a reference to this. Okay, let's write this field. This is the workhorse function. I'm gonna even put that in there. Here's the workhorse of the game. Okay, so this is what's going to happen. Okay, and I need to put it in. So I'm going to say we're going to call this private, and we're going to return void again. Private. That's a function that's called underscore spin button click event. Click. We're also going to have, it's going to be a type of event, which a create.js.mouse event, and it's going to return void for now. Okay, so that's the event. But when I click this button, it's going to make all that other stuff work. Now there is no other stuff right now. All right, so before we get to that, I want to update GitHub. I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go to Team Explorer, so you guys you're on the same page with me. Go home. I'm going to go to Changes, and I'm going to say added buttons to UI. Okay, I'm going to say commit. I'm going to go home, and then unsync commits, and sync. There we go. Okay, so we got that going. Now, let's go to our original assignment information. Remember, we have our assignment stuff, and we have some of this information here, right? So let me go back to, I believe it's under C, users, Tom, and then it's going to be under documents, under GitHub, and I have my old slot machine version 1, the original slot machine that I gave you guys as a file. I'm not going to open it up in thing, but I will take my JavaScript. I want to take a look at my main.js. That's what I gave. That's the only thing I have in here, right? And let's open it up with, well, it doesn't have to be code, but let's open up the VS Code and see what it does, right? It's funny, I'm opening Visual Studio Code in Windows 10, but anyways. So I have a couple of things here: player money, grapes, bananas, all this other stuff here. But I don't care about any of this stuff or even this thing yet. What I care about is what happens when I click the spin button. And going back to this old code, right, I can see but my old jQuery spin button click event. Here it is. I'm converting this thing. My old event says, well, my player money is, I'm going to enter my value, yeah. And if my player bet is greater than player money, then I can't do it. However, if everything is good, then what am I going to do? I need this spin result to equal to the reals method. So that means I need the reals method, and I need something called spin result. Okay, let's see what spin result is. If I go up here, spin result is, I mean, this is just regular JavaScript, so it could be anything right now. So spin result then, right, could be probably a string, I'm guessing. And here's my reals. And what am I getting back? My reals, what does it return? It has a bet line, which looks like an array, an outcome, which is also an array of integers, right? And down at the bottom, it returns my bet line, and which I'm going to assign to, and my bet line is going to be an array. So it's an array of strings. So that, the array of strings, is what my spin result is going to be. So let's program that in. So I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to say here's my, so this is all my, these are my instance variables, but you want to maybe go further and say something like UI variables, right? Just kind of put this a little bit separated, so when we build this big level, this is a different kind of level where we have a bunch of different variables we're using, right, for our objects to build our UI, right? So our UI variables, or maybe we call them UI objects, maybe. That might be a better name for them. And then we're also going to have some game variables. They're also private. We're going to call the first one. We're going to call it it's going to be called spin result underscore spin result, which is going to be of type. It's going to be a string array. So how do you do a string array, right, as a type? Anybody? How do I declare it of type string array? String, look like this, right? A string array. So it's going to be a string array. Okay? So I don't know how big it's going to be, but my spin result is of type string array. Okay? I also know that, let's go back to my little Visual Studio Code for a second where it has all my stuff. I know that my function bet line is also going to be a string array, but it's going to be local. So every time I spin the reals, it's going to regenerate this file. And the same thing with outcome. Outcome is going to be a number array, right? Some kind of a number array. This is going to be a string array as well. That's going to hold 3 strings. That's what it's going to be. That's going to be local. So I can probably pretty much take this whole reals function, but I also see something else. I have something called bet line, a local variable, a variable called bet line. I mean, I got to convert some of this stuff to make it all work. Math.random. I also have something else called check range, which I use. It's another function. These are all dependent functions that I have to bring in to make my reals function work. Okay? See where I'm going? I'm trying to build up to bring this in because it's not gonna work, right? Let's bring it in anyway as is, and I'll modify. So I'm gonna take this whole thing, make sure that I do it properly here. They always call me during the time when I'm teaching. It just never fails. I'm gonna kind of copy this whole thing. I'm gonna go back in here, and I know that I'm gonna have to call when I click my spin button click event. I'm gonna call the reels method, which is gonna be a private method, right? So I'm gonna have to go here, and here's I'm gonna just copy and paste. Bear with me while I do this. Bam. Right, here it is in here, and I'm going to have a lot of errors for a second. I don't need to have a function because there are no functions in my class because this is a class I'm building up, right? So I'm going to call this method, it's going to be a private method. There we go. So I'm reformatting private method, right, called reels with an underscore reels, and I'm going to make it lowercase reels, right? And it's going to return a string array. Right? It's going to return string array because that's what it's returning. So if you notice on the bottom, I'm returning betline. Betline is a string array. I have to declare this in here. So when I declare my var, my local variable betline, I'm going to declare it as a string array to get some code hinting. Right? String array of type this, and this my outcome. I'm going to keep my variables to make sure they work. My variables are also going to be of type a number array, right? My number array, and my string array. I reformatted my reels function, and look what I'm doing here. I'm saying my betline spin, right? My betline, and my outcome. Here's my outcome is 0, 0, 0. I'm gonna get a random number, right? My outcome spin. Here it is, right here. Is equal to a random number between 0 and 65, so 1 and 66, let's say. That's what it's going to be. And it's going to be positioned here, here, and here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the range, and this is where I need my check range utility function, right? Let's get that. So that's in here. Remember, I'm utilizing somebody else's code equivalent, right? This is my code, but might as well be somebody else's right now. So I need to find that check range utility method. Somewhere in here I have a check range. And let me see if I can find it here. Check range, here it is. It's kind of a silly method, but it checks the range, the value, the lower bounds and the upper bounds. And if my value is greater than the lower bounds and the value is less than the upper bounds, then return value. Otherwise, return the other, don't return the value. All right, so let's see how this works. I'm going to grab this thing. I'm going to pull it into my code here, which has got to be above here. So this is my private utility method that I'm going to put in. Bam. Which we're not going to make a function. We're going to call this, it's going to be private again. And this is where we're going to get into trouble. Check range, private check range. And what is it returning, right? The value, it's returning a value. And probably a number, right? But either a value that's not 0, because I'm checking to see when I do a check range, if the check range, whatever it is, between 1 and 27, right? That's what I'm saying, whatever it is. Is it 1 to 27? And if it's true, so actually it's returning Boolean. Make sense? The outcome of my spin, which is a number. So I'm passing in a value. The value is a number. So let's fix this up. This is almost like making a type definition file. This is a number, right? I'm getting all kinds of lovely responses here. Don't worry, right? And the reason why I'm getting this is because it says value number. It doesn't make any sense, right? Well, I will, but value is a weird variable. We're going to see that in a second. Value number. Lower bounds is also a number, and upper bounds is also a number. So we're going to do that. Lower bounds number, and upper bounds is also a number. And that should take away some of our errors. Let's see how this works. Check range also has to return a value. So our return method is going to return something. It's going to return a number, right? Right? That's what it's going to return. There we go. Now here's where we get in some trouble, because how can you return not a value? So it's almost like we're returning the value is not really what we're returning. We're returning true or false, right? So, but really the value that we're getting, so this is actually written weird, right? It works as JavaScript, but definitely, you know, this is where TypeScript is beautiful. TypeScript is sitting there going, what the hell have you written, right? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? For TypeScript is like, no. You can't make return of Boolean and a number. That's what you're doing, Tom, right? It can't be. It's got to be returned false or true. That's what you're returning. And here, look at what's happening here. Value is if value is greater than or equal to lower bounds, and if value is less than upper bounds, then what am I returning is, it says, look, if it's check range, case check range between 1 and 27, right? And then pass in the value, and if it's true, that's what I'm passing in, not value. It should be a true or false. So what I want to return here is what? True or false. That's what I'm returning. Now watch what I have to fix. I have to fix this function up a little bit. This is what you would kind of mess up if you actually were to look at this thing and go, the convoluted brain of Tom thought of this one, right? Well, no, that's why I'm helping you out with it, right? Okay, cool. So that works out. So it's a Boolean return. I check to see if the value that I get is between my lower bounds and my upper bounds. That's what this utility method does. If it's true, I return true. I also return false, right? Is there a way I can write this thing in one line? Yeah.
Not value, maybe they're trying to say that they're trying to.
It's my code. Don't worry. I know what I did. So here's the answer to that. What if I was to write this with ternary as a ternary operator? Oh yeah, I'm gonna get you guys to you're looking at me going, don't do it. But I see Steven's looking at me. This is how it looks. It looks like this. I don't have to use an if statement. I can do something like this. I can get rid of the if statement, right? Follow me here for a second, right? And I can do one of these. I can say, if it's this or this, right? Question mark, or sorry, colon, true, right? And then question mark, false. And I can write it like this. And I'm not sure if it's the question mark or the, I think it's the other way around. It's a question mark and the colon and then question mark. Is it question mark first?
Yeah.
Question mark and colon. Yeah. So this takes care of all this, right? And then this is what this returns. And what I'm going to do here is do one of these. Watch. So in one line, I'll do one of those and get rid of all this, because that's the same. You hate that, eh? It's called ternary operator, and actually it's a very nice and efficient way of writing it, right? So I need you to see this, because I'll be honest with you, in many ways, we write this, you'll see this in code out there, and to understand what it is, this is proper TypeScript, by the way, to write, because I am returning a Boolean value. I am getting it, I'm checking to see what this is. And what I need to do is just use my check range method, right? My check range method has to be, I just got to add an underscore here. I'm just going to do that to each of these ones. So that way you can see that if, but here's the problem. I'm not returning a value anymore. I'm returning if it's true or not. And that's not what I want. So we're going to go back and fix that in a second. Just bear with me. Because what am I really asking for here is a couple things. So I'm saying this. If it's true, return the value, right? Return the value, right? Which is Boolean. It's not Boolean, it's a number. Else, return false. Can't be. So we're going to have to return like a -1 or something like that. That would be the same thing, right? So let's make this a number. Let's just change this up a little bit. So I'm going to say this is a number, right? Return the number. In case if it's true, return the value, right? Otherwise, return -1. That would work. And then I do my check range, and it says, in cannot find name check range. Well, it's not going to be check range. It's going to be this dot underscore check range, right? Which I got to add in. I've got to add this in here. So this dot underscore check range, and otherwise it'll give me these errors, right? So that's all I'm doing. It's just adding the this dot underscore check range in here, just to take care of our thing here. All right, and we're going to do some other checking here in a second. Okay, cool. I'm still getting errors, and what am I getting errors about? I'm getting errors these blanks, because before what I used to do is to keep a tally of how many bells, how many blanks, how many grapes, and all that stuff, right? And that's really inefficient. But for now, let's just do one of these. Let's just comment these out, right? Because we don't care how many. We're just going to try and get this thing to print out our little bell, bar, whatever, right? We don't care about what it does. Okay, so that takes away all of our errors for my reals function. Whew, right? My reals function is done. I haven't checked to see any winnings or anything like that. I'm just checking to see what my wheels are going to be, and then they should return a value. So it's going to return the bet line. Bet line is actually going to be a string array, and I'm going to receive it in something called the spin result. Right? Let's go down here. So now I'm going to rewrite my method here, right? So if I look back at the spinning all the way down to what I gave you guys, it looks like this. Spin result is equal to reals. Okay, spin result is equal to reals. And then what I want to do is I want to print out the spin result, let's say, to the console. Let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to take these two lines of code, copy them, right, and go back to here and put them in here and modify them to make so they work. So then I say this dot underscore spin result is equal to this dot underscore reals. Get that, and then instead of fruits, I'm just going to put this in a console.log. Console.log this dot underscore spin results, and then see how this works. So I'm kind of enabling the heart and soul of my slot machine by doing this in this one line. All I've done is I've just said this dot spin result is equal to this dot reals. I'm just replacing what was here. Spin result is equal to reals. I'm making it so it's in our context now. And fruits, it's not going to be fruits anymore. It's going to be we're going to print it out, right? We're going to send it to the console. Let's see if it works. Whew. And then I'll send this up to GitHub for you guys, right? Steven's still upset at me because of the ternary operator, right? All right, let's see if I can start this off. And if I click, first of all, let me see if I can enable our more tools. I'll do the developer tools. I'll look at the console, and I'll get rid of those other things later on, but I'll kind of pull this down here and make this a little bit larger for us so we can see it, and maybe a little bit smaller now. There we go. And so when I spin, grapes blank bar. Grapes blank blank. See, Steven? Blank cherry blank. Blank banana blank. Huh? Huh? Blank blank blank. I lost. Banana grapes. Okay, cool. So I've got that working. That means I can use this, right? I can use this to start getting access to my images. Right? How do I do that? It's a long one. Well, a couple things. I know that my grapes, banana, orange, cherry, and all that is lowercase. It's not an uppercase like this. So I got to change these. So grapes, banana, orange, cherry, bar, bell, and 7. Now you're going to say, what the hell? What are you talking about, Tom? Right? Well, first of all, I need to know what spin I'm at. Because depending on what spin I'm in, so I only can spin 3 times, right? Every time I click, it's not the spin that I want to do, it's the real number, right? Real 1, real 0, real 1, real 2, right? So I'm going to call this thing, instead of spin, I'm going to rename this thing, refactor, rename, just for our purposes, we're going to call this real. Okay, so depending on the real, right, that's what I'm checking. I'm checking the real, the outcome of the real, and what if it's between 1 and 27, it's going to be a blank. That's what I'm saying, okay? Now, this is good, because now that I know the real, I can say, well, if my real in the reals method, remember I have something called the spin result, right? The spin result itself is going to have my reals, right? Let's take a look. I've got to make sure that it makes sense to me. So in my bet line, right, here's my bet line. My bet line. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say one of these. I'm going to say, well, my bet line then, right, which is of real, depending if the real is 0, 1, or 2, I'm going to spit it out to where? At the bottom, I'm going to get my bet line, right? And this bet line is going to have everything. My first grape, my second, and my third. I may not need to do that later on. I could parse it like I'm doing here. Like I could say my spin result 0, spin result 1, spin result 2, and then I could use this spin result to create to change up my real 1, real 2, real 3, right, to this new object. Let's see what I'm talking about. You think I'm crazy, right? Watch. So we know that we have a spin result, right? And I know I have 3 objects, this dot underscore tile1. Well, tile1 is a sprite, and it has an image, right? So I want to change my image to something else. How do I change my image to something else? How do I swap out my image? If I go image, I can't do that. If I go frame, can I do that? Frame rate, no. Can I go play? I could play, right? And what do I want to go to and play or go to and stop? I want to maybe go to and stop. Go to and stop. I want to go to and stop on the animation in my tile, right? That says is the same name as my spin result. So this dot spin result, right? Oops. This dot spin result. And then it's going to be 0, 1, 2, right? That's what's going to go in there. So go to and stop. What go to and stop means is it comes from the old Flash type of stuff. Go to and play means actually play the animation. Go to and stop means go there and stop, right? And play, swap out my image. I may have to use go to and play. I don't know if it's go to and play or go to and stop that I have to use. But it'll swap out my image to this new image. All right? So that's what it does. Now this is for each of the images, and there's 3 of them. So I might as well kill all this. Well, I might as well keep this as my debugging right now. What I want to do is do a little for loop. So for var tile, and so for tile in my tile, or whatever you want to call it, my real, for var real is equal to 0, and then for real is less than 3, right? And then real plus plus, right? So I can do this properly. And then what I want to do is put make this inside of a code block, right? So I want to kind of go through, and I want to say go to and stop. Now it can't be tile. This is where see tile 1. See how I mentioned it earlier. See why I did this? I said this because tile 1, tile 2, tile 3 is probably what I want to do. So I want to make an array of tiles, some reworkings, right? Private, it's called a tiles. It's going to be tiles, right? A tiles, it's going to be tiles, and it's going to be a game objects array. That's what it's going to be, a game objects array. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Objects dot game object array. That's the notation. A game objects array, right? So now this game objects array, I have to, because I mentioned it, I could mention how big it is. I could sit there and go, well, it's 3. An array of 3 objects. But I can't do that here Although I could say, well, it's always going to be 3. I know that, so I could do something like this. I could do something like is equal to a new array, you know, as an example, objects array or whatever. I could do that way. Or how do I instantiate or it's an array of game objects. I need to add in a tile of a new objects.game object. That's what I got to put in there 3 times. So I got to initialize my array. And that, you know what I'm doing here? I'm doing all this work so I can loop through 1 time. Sorry, it's a lot of work. So that's why I'm saying I could do this, but I didn't do it for this reason. If it was a much larger array, if I had like 20 things, 30 things, then it would make sense for me to create an array. But it's a lot of overhead for some clean code. So I think what I'd like to do is do one of these, get rid of this, and copy this line 3 times, and we're done. Like that's how it, I mean, you have to make a decision sometimes what's the most efficient way. And unfortunately for this, it's this, right? Where I've got spin result 1, spin result 2, and we're done. And make these changes, right? 2 and 3. Okay, let's see what happens. So every time I spin the button, it should change my images now, right? And then we're done for today, right? If I've done everything correctly. And then now you think about adding the logic in to check to see if he's got enough money. And then if he's got enough money, then he can then the spin button would be active. Otherwise, you would make it so that you create it so it's not active or disabled, or some kind of message that says you can't bet.
Yay!
Spin, baby. Spin, 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 spin. Huh? And that's how beautiful it is. So now I've got my main mechanic working. I think I've given you guys enough to finish this thing, right? I think at this point you have more than enough. You have to bring in the other functions that's part of the stuff I've already given you. And to do those checks, you have to kind of, and you might find out a different way of doing your, like I'm not tallying how many I have. And what I do is I check to see how many of each one I have. If I have 3 blanks, obviously I've lost. If I have 3, you know, grapes or whatever, and I use the tally instead of a lambda function to check to see how many are in. So I'd want to rather search. I want to search my array, my string, to see how many I have in my string. And is there an easy way to do that without a lambda or some kind of you know, regular expression? And I'll tell you right now, it's not easy to search a string. So I'm going to search a string to how many occurrences, that's what I'm searching, how many occurrences of grapes or oranges or whatever I'm searching for. And like I said, there is no real easy way to do this. So that's why I use the tally, a silly way of doing it, without using a lambda expression or some kind of regular expression. Okay, so that's it for me for today. I think we've kind of gone as far as I want to go. But basically, we've got most of the functionality going. It's for you really now to kind of finish it off. And we'll see you next week. Remember, next week, again, exam 3:30. All right?